Singait la delangwad luchan, jiskang hanudik gaga, nika collison hanudik gaga yatschaidega kilki. Good day, everyone. My name is Jiskang Nika Collison. I'm Executive Director of Sa Flindanai, the Haida Gwaii Museum. We're filming on Haida Gwaii, territory of the Haida Nation. We're at the Haida Heritage Center at Nagai, home to the Haida Gwaii Museum. I'm really excited to welcome you all. After a year of being closed, we are so excited to be open to the public with the Haida Gwaii Arts Council's All Island Art Show being one of the first exhibitions of the year. Also in celebration of opening, the Haida Heritage Center and the Haida Gwaii Museum are thrilled to be able to offer free admission to local residents through June 5th. We do require that all visitors observe the Haida Nation's state of emergency measures, which include wearing a mask, staying 6 feet apart from those not in your bubbles, and that visitation is limited to immediate household bubbles. Bookings can be made through our trading house by phoning or emailing trading house manager Lynn Hewen. We are aware, of course, as everyone else, that measures can change. So we'll be following current measures at any point during visitation, which will be communicated to you upon arrival and posted throughout the museum.
So my name is Jamie McDonald. I have been living on Haida Gwaii for about 8 years now, and for the past 5 years I've been coordinator and curator for the All Islands Art Show. It's definitely one of my favorite jobs of the year. I always look forward to it. I especially look forward to just the drop-off day when artists are coming around, dropping off all their beautiful artwork that they've been working on during the year. It's always such a surprise to see what they're going to come up with, the materials that they use, and also just some people that you have no idea are artistic or creative that come out of the woodwork. This year's show, obviously, with this year being so weird and strange due to the pandemic, this year's show is also reflecting some of those differences and changes that we've had to adapt to this year. Not only in how we view the show, which is by appointment only, but also we've developed a huge online part to the show. So we're going to be having an online gallery that's hosted on the Haida Gwaii Museum's website. We're having an online virtual tour, so if you're not able to visit the museum in person, you can just sit at home and we'll take you on this amazing tour. You're going to be able to see not only every piece individually, but also how they interact with the other pieces in the gallery. And I always love that part because it's such a beautiful reflection of how everybody in this community is so different, but when they come together, it just creates a beautiful wholeness and cohesiveness.
Hi, my name's Terry Lynn Wood, and I live on Haida Gwaii. I have since 2015, and I'm a photographer. I love to take pictures of the surrounding areas. It's beautiful around here. And while I'm walking in the bush and that, I usually notice light on things and just want to get down on my hands and knees and get dirty and take pictures of things like mushrooms or even big things like trees, birds on the water. I just really love nature. This piece was, I was taking pictures of people taking salmon for broodstock for our hatchery, and just happened to notice this little mushroom next to a little stump, but it was only about that tall. So I just had to get down on my hands and knees on my belly and take a picture of it. And it's just beautiful. It just makes me feel good. And I hope that when people see it, that it makes them feel good too.
Neil said, "That looks like an island when someone was going to feed the fire." I snatched that piece of wood and put it together with other Haida Gwaii-ish scraps. I love the exploration side to creating an abstract work. I go into it without knowing what it's going to look like, or have any idea of what I want it to be. My process consists of relaxing my mind and putting it in a state of play. I give myself permission to just get in there and use the materials with my hands, not worrying about what the work is going to look like, or if it will be any good. As the creative energy starts to flow, an image that is completely abstract forms on the canvas. Halfway through this process, there is a critical shift when my conscious mind recognizes something in the abstract image and it starts to work from it and turn it into something that is recognizable. Figurative shapes and symbols appear, collaged together in a composition, creating a unique story made up of fragments from my past experiences, thoughts, and emotions. I like the fact that there's still a little bit of mystery in the painting that I can't explain. And I think because of that, the work will take on a different meaning depending on the viewer and the personal experiences they bring to the work. I like to experiment with whatever materials I have at hand. I like embroidery. I tend to use cats as models as I find they are very expressive.
My name is Benedicta Hansen, and I just entered a piece into the show that's called All is Vanity. And it's a big door that I have used multimedia on, and it's about climate change and how the 7 deadly sins were called deadly because they create chaos in our lives, but also in our larger world. And today we're seeing with climate change, we're seeing, huge communities having to move and shift, and we're seeing storms and things that are destroying houses and homes and boats and everything. I used a door because we build houses and we put doors on them to keep the elements outside and to protect ourselves so that we can remain safe, so we can sleep at night, so that we can procreate, so that we can learn, nourish each other. The door is painted on both sides with a very destructive piece on one side. I used collage elements of houses up on top of a hill and people in tent villages down below. And one of the things we're seeing at this time is people are more focused on themselves than they are about community and the good of this world, about what can sustain us and nourish us and nurture us. And so the interesting thing about the painting is you can't see both sides at the same time. So on the one side it has just nature, and I found this piece of driftwood and it looks like 2 people copulating. And so I put that in there because that's all part of, we're growing, nature carries on despite what we do. We cannot control nature as much as we think we can. And so when you have the painting, you can only look at it on one side or the other. People don't want to look at the destructive side. They want to look at the other side, which is just about, I used the beach from Skidegate down here, it's very abstract, and I changed the perspectives I thought, well, I'll just play around with it, but I've got water rising at the bottom and flotsam and jetsam everywhere, because that's what we basically are in the middle of nature, is flotsam and jetsam. And so that's kind of what I did, is this compare and contrast. We want to look at the nice side. Our own destructive aspects are on the other side. That's the side we don't want to look at. So you can't see both sides at the same time, but we have to consider which side we're going to be looking at in the future.
I am an artist who loves color and interesting texture. I've been painting for nearly 40 years and still find more ways to experiment with texture. This particular piece is composed of a heavy grit clay on canvas that I let dry and then rolled to crack it. Next, I rubbed on a water-soluble graphite putty and buffed it to a silvery shine. The next step was using acrylic paint in layers of color. I like how the acrylic paint behaves with the textured graphite clay base. This painting is not reminiscent of any particular place, but more of a mindscape from imagination. As a photographer on Haida Gwaii, I am always searching for unique images of scenes and wildlife. When taking wildlife photos, there is usually only a short amount of time to capture the moment before the wildlife is gone or has moved out of an advantageous scene. The instant the camera clicks, the response of the animal often creates a better capture of the animal than in the first photo. The instant that the animal turns to see where the shutter sound comes from often creates the ideal eye contact to capture the moment. A bonding relationship is then met for a moment at least. I find it very important to be close enough to the wildlife that details become important in the photo. I try to maintain high quality in the technical end of photography, such as the depth of field, focus, exposure, and composition. I feel I have been successful when light seems to come from within the animal's eye. This piece of cedar was pulled from a slash pile and given a new life. I hope you enjoy it. This driftwood painting began with inspiration from Emily Carr. She made art with limited resources, often painting on plywood. Also inspired by Carr's painting techniques, I wanted to recreate those wide and fast brush strokes from her sketches that show the underpainting, the plywood. The driftwood pieces were placed in a way to create a sense of movement and current while playing with the texture and natural colors of the beach.
Hi, I'm Sandy Gray. Just recently moved back to Haida Gwaii and really happy to be back. While I was waiting, I was inspired by this photograph of Caroline Galt's of the raven, and so I had to paint it. And it traveled with me all the way up to Haida Gwaii, and since I've moved into my home, Raven's befriended me and visits me daily, and it's sort of like an inspiration coming to life. So enjoy.
Jenna is a Haida Gwaii-based artist originally from Calgary and a graduate from the University of Victoria Visual Arts program. Since moving to the coast, she's continually been inspired by the vibrant colors and landscapes that surround her. However, in the year of the pandemic, Jenna has focused her art inwards and drawn inspiration from the things closest to home. Inspired by the tenacity of this particular alder tree, a truck tire drove over top of an alder seedling and parked on it for the next 14 years. The seedling persevered and grew into the pattern of the tire thread. The top is a one-piece cedar slab finished with a hard, scratch-resistant clear epoxy, handcrafted in Haida Gwaii by a local artisan who was born and raised here. This is an example of the one-of-a-kind pieces made by Unique D Furniture. You can find other pieces on display exclusively at QC Liquidation Store. I enjoy the luminous light and mossy textures in the forest, and somehow a toad crept in. Once again, I'm compelled to explore the interaction between abstraction and hyperrealism through my creative photography. Nature sometimes offers us a perspective that, when turned into a two-dimensional representation, can become disorienting, surreal, and intriguing. This piece invites the viewer to dive into an unaltered image, to try and make sense of a reality that isn't immediately obvious. The photo was captured in the Mammon River riparian area. I love the unique feeling I get when entering this world through the lens of my camera. How do you feel when viewing this image?
I just want to introduce myself, Lance Reed, relatively new resident here, and grateful to the nation to have this space to create some pieces of art that just came to me spontaneously. I got an opportunity to build a gate and then more gates, and using the cedar, love the smell of cedar, and found some old wire hidden in the forest, probably old construction material. What I'm inspired by is just nature and the beauty of Haida Gwaii. Great place to come and chill out for as long as I get to stay.
This past year has been rather lonely as we miss the hugs and company of our friends and family. Like the wonderful rocks we find randomly around our communities, we are waiting for our time to bloom. Alice Rislin is a visionary symbolist artist who explores reclaiming the magical, powerful, sacred, untamed wildness that we were as children and could choose to be again. She has apprenticed and studied under the visionary symbolist artist Shiloh Sophia and has achieved the position of journeywoman in the Guild of Intentional Creativity. Alice loves exploring the magic and mystery of our beautiful earth and how we can sharpen our visionary senses to experience the realms that are available to those who are willing to dance at the edge of what is possible as it continues to expand. The timing of the year inspired the piece. Bears are coming back into town. It seemed like the right time to carve a bear. October 2020. I signed up for a course, Tiny Landscapes, with Dean Fitzpatrick Studios. This has now evolved into the beginnings of series Island Landscapes, using all manner of recycled materials. There will be many more to come.
Okay, well, my name's Laura Dutay. and I design jewelry, so I go through different stages of doing it. First, I kind of figure out what is it I want to do, what do I want to make, either earrings, pendants, bracelets, charms, rings. And so what I do is I usually am inspired by something from the island because I just love being here, and I really love birds, and I love the water, and I love creatures in the sky, and so even a cloud or a wave or a flower. In this case, for the show, I always do something like that is enhanced by the island. So this one's called Haida Gwaii charms. The charms are a baby seal, and I did sketches of the baby seal first, and then I did a curler, which is like one of those really nice foamy waves when you go out like at Jungle Beach and you see those nice waves coming in, and I always feel good when I see waves. And so I did a curler wave for a charm, a baby seal face, kind of with his eyes glistening and whiskers. And then the other one was Balance Rock. You know, everyone loves Balance Rock, and it's also a challenge. I always like to challenge myself to do miniature cameos of landscapes. And so I do things I love, kind of have my favorite creatures, but I also like to push myself to see if I can capture landscape, because that's a difficult thing to do in silver etching, silver engraving. And so I did a lot of photos and sketches of Balance Rock. And when I do it, I try to, when I'm engraving, there's certain lines that get pronounced that make it more dimensional in your design. So I'm always kind of allowing my brain to kind of capture the primary lines that I'll be using that give your brain the most information visually about what's going to work in a charm. And the charms, in this case, they're 5/8 by 3/4. So it's a very, very tiny little area to create like an image like Balance Rock. Of course, I've got visors on, and I do my drawing by hand, and I do it on plates. This time I did on like a 0.8 mil plate. It has a nice weight, and so I do it flat. I cut out my shape, and then I draw on it, and then I proceed to engrave it, and then I gouge it out and enhance it with like different texturing. And then when I feel like I've captured what I want without going into too much detail, but just enough information for the brain to say, I think I know what that is, because the light still has to hit it, and then that kind of plays into it. So I like to really play with light, and you'll see that in the seal eyes. I got little glistening eyes that kind of shine. And after that, I form it, so I kind of like formed it out so it'd have some shape, and then I polish it and clean it, and then I start to assemble the pieces. So this charm bracelet has 3 charms, and it's like, hopefully it'll help people feel happy. And Haida Gwaii is like a great place to feel good. It's a feel good place, and all these little charms are to make you feel kind of like happy when you're kind of feeling, you know, just anytime you're wearing jewelry, you want it to make yourself feel good with it. And sometimes people miss the island, so I think it would be a nice gift to send someone that can't come home because of the pandemic, or, you know, or it's a nice distraction to look at. You know, you look at an image and it kind of helps you, you know, forget about what's going on and just focus on something more peaceful. And a lot of my pieces are kind of meditative like that. They're kind of peaceful, enjoyable, feel-good pieces. Yeah, and that's it.
This painting of Jack Armstrong and Bob Crooks was commissioned as a gift to the Tillel community. After the All Island Art Show, the piece will hang in a temporary home in the Tillel River Fly and Tackle store, the perfect spot. With an interest in growing food and a passion for painting, I was thrilled when the idea to use feathers from a rooster seemed to work to create a captivating image. The mandala is a symbol for wholeness. While adding each feather, I meditated on the interconnectedness of all things, and how no single aspect of life or of one's personality operates in isolation. We raise Icelandic chickens, which are known for their beautiful and unique feathers. I am grateful to our animals for providing us with food for our bodies, manure for our gardens, and now plumage for painting. This image is part of a children's book to be released this summer. Keep your eyes open for the gassy lasts and visit lexiforbes.com for updates. This is a digital submission only, no live piece for viewing at the museum. I make art with conceptual frameworks that focus on the relationship between humans and the natural environment. My work is concerned with remembering, rebuilding, and exploring boundaries. The boundaries between natural and unnatural, between human and non-human, and between wild and domesticated are pertinent to my work. The works are surreal yet whimsical fictions. Ambiguity, contradiction, and juxtaposition express the complexity and paradoxical manner of humans within the natural world.
Right. Hello there. My name is Ginwadluwans Ununsid, and my given name is Noel Bellis, and my canoe is a feeding sculpin. It's one of my crests is the sculpin, and it's a pretty relaxed sculpin sitting on the bottom, just waiting for his next meal to come along. And it's 55 inches long, and it's 1/4 scale, so it would be around a 19 or 20 foot canoe. Tight squeeze putting 4 guys in there, but I think if you were just going on a small day trip fishing, 20 footer and a couple guys and a couple of hands out there to do a day's fishing off a little boat like that would be good. And that's about all I have to say right now. Thank you.
This painting was inspired by the strong shadows on a rare sunny winter day. The title pretty much says the rest. I am a body modification artist, a gardener, and lover of the natural world. This is my contribution to a very rich and fertile creative community. We watch, mesmerized, when a flock of peeps swerve in unison, each wing flashing. A scene more marvelous than anything I can paint. Photos of walks with dear friends bring forth memories more splendorous than I can depict. Yet, earlier attempts have fallen short. In this Sanderling Sandpipers, I'm only attempting to catch a wisp of those memories. Thus, this beach resembles not one but many. The 2 people represent many people whom we love. I think these Sanderlings would say, "You don't really know us. We are not human, but we have our own thoughts and dreams."
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Taylor, and I did the piece Celestial. I used acrylic paint. My inspirations were kind of just like old psychedelic, like kind of like album covers and artwork like that. I like using acrylic paint on wood because it almost has a bit of a glow to it and really gets those colors out.
Ong is a Kundalini yoga mantra which creates a sound current through the physical body that can be felt on different levels of one's being. I wanted to create a visual representation of this mantra, which can be interpreted as the universal creativity is my true essence. I listened to or chanted the mantra while painting and trusted the creative force to guide the process. It was a delight to create, and I hope you enjoy it. Earlier in the pandemic, our public health doctor for BC was gifted a pair of lovely dress shoes. As the pandemic has played out, I felt she needed more appropriate footwear to slog through the quagmire that she encountered.
My piece, it's ink and acrylic paints, but it's done in a watercolor method, so I used a lot added water to the paints. I drew it first, did a couple of drafts, and then I transferred it to an illustration board, went over my pencil with ink, erased all the pencil lines, and then painted it in. It's more or less my family, like a snapshot of what this year has looked like for us. Not necessarily reflecting COVID-19 during the pandemic, but also probably more significant of what it looks like having a young family, and then in addition being raised in Masset on Haida Gwaii. The kids, I think all kids, I don't think my kids are particular, but kids just love nature. They love the outdoors. And so I feel the piece shows how much of the outdoors we bring into our home. I think my daughter and I counted, and there's like about 15 references to animals, and they all have a direct link to an experience or a story of our family. So we caught an octopus once. There's an octopus in the sink, and so the kids go nuts, of course, because there's an octopus. You know, we went crabbing, brought the crab home. My husband went hunting, brought the deer home. Our basement is just full of stuff, so we ended up hanging the deer in our kitchen. So it's also the first time that I skinned a deer. So it's a new experience for me. And so a lot of it, we've only been here for 3 going on 4 years. And a lot of the experiences are new for me as well as for the kids. And it was just a lot of fun. Like, having kids is a ton of fun. Being around animals, being out in nature is always fun, and that's why the piece is so personal and why it's so significant.
This is my Madonna. She is masked. She is frightened silly. Child on one hip, groceries on the other. The future lies largely undetermined. My paintings are expressions of my reaction to a scene or place. When the pandemic was announced, I was just beginning to work on a new exhibition project entitled Connected Realm. I spent the first few weeks creatively treading water and wondering if my show would even happen. I continued to create during this time, exploring my reaction to the COVID-19 announcement. This painting, entitled The COVID Forest, embodies the biggest challenge I have felt during the past year, which has been the insecurity of a known outcome or future. The surface I chose to paint on is burlap, which is loose and rough, allowing the paint to fall through the weave in an unpredictable fashion. I chose to create a forest of my little whimsical trees, physically separated from each other, socially distanced. I created a very anemic, empty color of green to paint the trees because they felt more like tree spirits, the notion of trees, rather than actual trees.
So my name is Missy Mondu, and I live in Dodging Geets, and my piece is created from tiny bits of recycled textiles that I've gathered from mainly our local thrift shop, but also bits that have been either cut off people's clothes and I've kept, or gifted to me from community members. So it's just kind of showcasing how easy it is to turn little bits into something beautiful. So yeah.
Last year, I felted this man's face. It was the start of everything to come. I was laid off work and living alone. I made a friend. Literally, I drank wine and felted his mustache. I listened to the news. Coronavirus, corona, beer. I felted my friend a beer. I mounted him in a white frame surrounded with sterile white cloth. Pandemic. I hung him above my couch. As cases increased, I took him down and added little yellow stitches. Not beer spillage, but virus. Coronavirus. No longer just a beer. Calla lilies represents a period of great reflection for me. COVID had slowed my jewelry business down to a point where I didn't need to create more jewelry, so I began exploring textile art again. A spontaneous decision led me to create this piece. It began with one flower and turned into an entire bouquet. The process was contemplative, meditative, and therapeutic during a time where I was feeling unsettled and restless. The end result being a beautiful bouquet of flowers that will never die and a clearer sense of self-purpose.
Guslas Hanudi Kigaga. My name is Guslas. I come from Skidegate. My clan is Skagilda. Now, I've been studying art, Haida art, since I was about maybe 12, and I've always been around it my whole life. I come from a family of artists, with my sister, my uncle, my nani, so it was a sure thing that I'd become an artist as well. And I've been apprenticing with my Uncle Robin since October actually, and the piece I've submitted to the art show is one of the pieces I worked on with him, and I'm very grateful to him for teaching me all he knows. It's been a great experience working with him and getting into the art world, and I'm quite excited to finally actually be doing what I love, art, Haida art for that matter. Yeah.
I have always seen photorealism as the ultimate challenge for portraiture work. I was extremely fortunate to have come upon the Drew Blair School of Realism in South Carolina and decided to attend. While I've never picked up an airbrush in my life, I excitedly discovered an entirely new to me approach to painting. I'm looking forward to pressing in and doing more. This piece is etched in woolly mammoth ivory and India ink and set in soapstone. In memoriam of the talented artist who created it, we wanted to share this with the community. Scrimshaw is a passion-driven and meticulous process that includes engraving on bone or ivory and pouring pigments into etchings. You will often need a magnifying glass to fully appreciate the detail. Sean Travis Stevens Hugh Bagley was born on April 26, 1991 in Vancouver and raised on Haida Gwaii. An artist from a very young age in various mediums, he began apprenticing under Fred Watmo for Scrimshaw around age 17. He attended 3 years of Emily Carr and created an impressive and inspiring body of work in many different mediums. He is dearly missed and deeply loved. Big small things. Small things create eternal gardens under the sea, attached like plants, living like animals. Small things create big waves. The artist expresses heartfelt appreciation to Benita Saunders, who made this print possible with inspiration, encouragement, and studio space. To artists and biologists, past and present, who always inspire me. To friends, family, and colleagues who create life's richness. And to you for appreciating the visual arts.
This year I'm being a little different. I'm submitting a sewing piece, and they are the negative pieces of Haida form line design project. So I make like eagle collars, raven collars, frog vests, things like that in ultra suede wool, either for my family or I sell at like Santa Fe Indian Market. And so every time you cut those out, you have these pieces that you cut out. It's the negative space you're cutting out. So the eye pops out, or the form line design on the body pops out. And over the years, I've saved all these negative piece cuts because I had in my mind I wanted to do something. And so I've tried to lay them out on a simple cloth in not quite a random form, but dispersed in no particular shape. And so what it's called is, that's a negative, because it's all negative pieces that are showing off. And so to me, it's showing that all parts of the design are important. You have the positive, which is the design that you see on button blankets, but you can't see that positive design. You can't see that design without the negative pieces. So these are all the negative pieces that are being acknowledged. So it was a fun piece. It was a lot more work than I thought it would be, but it's really nice to do.
A plethora of palettes. This year Mike decided to put brush on canvas and found much success painting landscapes and wildlife. I see you, a beautiful and yet fearsome hippopotamus emerging from his watery home at dawn, represents both the emergence of a newfound talent and the promise of each new day. As we endure year 2 of the global pandemic, Mike wishes to share the hope of new beginnings and the successes available to each of us when we look unbiased at every new situation. ICU shows us that what is visible of ourselves is the start of possibility. What awaits under the surface and all around us is yet to be discovered.
Well, it's a beautiful day today here in Skidegate, and I'm happy to do this impromptu interview that I wasn't expecting. But that's life here in Haida Gwaii. Every day is full of surprises, so here we are. And I'm talking to you today about my piece called Drift, and this is the second time I've submitted work to the show. It's just a real honor to have my work shown in this beautiful museum that we're so fortunate to have. And so Drift is a painting of the inlet where I live, where the Yaccoon River meets the Masset Inlet. And when I came to Haida Gwaii 5 years ago, I walked the trail to the famous golden spruce and discovered the marvelous inlet in Port Clements. And there are these massive trees that come washing down from the river, but also that fall from the barges that bring the lumber into the mill in Port Clements and the port there. So the whole mouth is just strewn with these massive logs, drift logs. So I was up at the viewing tower one day, and there was a tourist, and she took a photograph of this particular view. And I asked her to email it to me, which she did right there and then. And over the following year, I created this piece, and it's 24 by 36 acrylic. I do work in other mediums, such as watercolor and oil. And I've really come to love all of those mediums, and each one offers something a little different. Watercolor flows, as you would imagine. Oil is something that you can be very precise in the detail, and acrylic is somewhere in the middle. And so it's great fun to work in acrylic. It's great fun to tell the story, and I hope that you all enjoy the experience of the expanse of this amazing inlet. Thank you. It was nice to have the chance to talk about my art. I don't think there's much more that I can say other than that I've been at it for a lifetime.
Recently, a dear friend gifted me a COVID-19 friendly painting class with the talented Tara Emery. 4 hours later, I walked out with Solo the Squirrel. I really enjoyed the creative process. Time stood still, and a part of my spirit flickered. Solo was a rescued critter that lived with my partner and I until he, the squirrel, one day returned to the wild. When I got home and hung my first ever painting on the wall, I was mesmerized by his expression. My rendition of Solo turned out looking like a rather serious-looking senior squirrel, a bit battered and worn, befitting of the times. This is the last photo I took before my drone and I malfunctioned, and the drone landed in Yaccoon Lake. I took watercolor lessons many years ago as a journal technique to use when traveling, and have always been attracted by color and a sense of playfulness. After working on the main 3 fish in the painting, I discovered other fish swimming in the shadows that fed into a sense of a hidden world of fish. This attempt to take up my brush again feels satisfying and surprising.
Okay, so I'm Dorothy Garrett, and my piece is called Mischievous Mike, who happens to be my husband. So one morning we were sitting and talking, and the sun was shining in through the window and just creating shadows on his face, and I just started following the lines and the shadows and just appreciating, all that character, I guess, that comes with an aging face. And the other thing I found myself noticing, besides that, which I really love, that just the shadows and what shows up on your face as you age. I like that, but I also noticed how even through that, some of the character of how you were when you were younger kind of still there, right? Still shows through. And I just thought, wouldn't that be just really cool to try to capture that part of it? So to appreciate the change, but also to recognize the part that's still there from your youth, or that you carry on, kind of the essence of yourself. So that can be like in a smile or an expression, and Mike actually likes to tease, and he's kind of happy when he can kind of get some reaction from you when he's teasing, and it shows up in his face for that. So that's kind of the moment I tried to capture in this piece, and I chose pencil because I just love the simplicity of it, and it allows, because I'm still very much in a learning process, it just allows me to be able to focus on an element, which for me was value at the time. I was really trying to learn a bit more about value. So it allowed me to focus on that without having to think about, the colors and all that kind of thing. So yeah, chose pencil.
Crabbing is a seasonal activity we greatly enjoy, usually making a day of it, catching, cooking, and eating at the beach. As well as crabbing, the day entails exploring the drift line, wondering at the treasures thrown up by the sea, sharing food with good friends, much laughter, and a good conversation. Last year, and so far this year as well, has pretty much been a solitary gathering. No social distancing challenge at all. The land, water, skies, and the 7 teachings. Narrative medicine and acrylic paint. Statistics handwritten. Messages of action in permanent marker. COVID-19 images buried under the layers of paint, incidents of violence against Indigenous women, held within the four walls, within their families, in their communities, daily experiences. An Indigenous woman in a red dress, a vision of healing, standing in power, guided by sacred teachings, connected to the earth and water. The statistics will not define us. We are whole women.
I'm like everybody else. I love whales. Like, you can sit out here some days and see gray whales. But my dream is to see a blue whale. They're the biggest whales on planet Earth. They can grow, I forget how long, it's about 98 feet, 200 tons, and that's what I want to see. So I drew a blue whale in my mind. I looked at some pictures, and then I drew one on a piece of silk. I do silk painting, and I drew the blue whale that I want to see when I see my blue whale. And they have huge pleats under their jaw so they can eat krill, and they just eat tons of krill, and their pleats will puff up and they'll grow to their big size. And so that's the one I'm going to see. They're going to have mauve under there and blue, and they're going to be it's going to be mottled blue. And that's how they ID blue whales, is by their pigmentation on both sides of the whale. And it doesn't change over their lifetime, it just so that they grow. And so that's how researchers ID them. And like every other species, most species, blue whales were hunted very extensively, and their numbers are extremely low now. And of course, researchers are very, very, very concerned about them. So I just dreamed to see one. And that's the story of my piece. And silk painting is maybe like a very complicated process, a long process. And you have to wash the silk first before you even start. You have to draw your design with a water-soluble pen, and you got to put resist, draw it on resist. You got to put the dye on, and then once that all dries, and you have to dry each stage, you have to dry for a couple days after, and then the final stage is you have to steam. You have to steam the piece of silk, and you have to steam it over boiling, simmering water for a couple hours. And it's really tricky because if you get any moisture or steam on it, it gets on the silk and you get a big blotch and it ruins it. And there is, trust me, I've tried many ways and there's really no way to fix it. So, and this one worked out. So I'm happy, and that's my blue whale. Thank you.
As the French author André Malraux once said, art is a rebellion against fate. Art on Haida Gwaii has been critical to surviving the past and surviving this past year. Artists help us see and feel what the rest of us are too busy doing something else that we may not get the chance. Artists observe, collect, absorb, and communicate what's going on around us. Again, the work in this show is so reflective of the past year, not just the artist statements, but the palettes, the colors, and the approaches. It's an extraordinary show. We congratulate the Haida Gwaii Arts Council, curator Jamie McDonald, and the artists again. It's extraordinary. And also a big shout out to art adjudicator Evelyn Vanderhoop, who's spending time with all these creative people and having great conversations about where their work is going.
I'd like to express just how impressed I am with the quality of the work. There's some artists, having coordinated it now for 5 years, there's some artists who've been contributing every year, and it's been an amazing journey to see their evolution throughout those years. Not just in how good they are or how better they become in their technique, but also in what inspires them. And having that little tidbit of being let into a person's life through their art is always such a joy. And I would like to personally thank like all of the artists for what they contribute, because it's beautiful, it's inspiring, and it inspires me anyways to continue on this path of creativity.
And now I see the wind blowing from the northwest, and I hear those honkers again on the rambling quest. And over Lord's Valley I rode like a ball, and in the wind I hear them call. Wild goose, loose goose, I count them all. Here comes that white walking wolf, hungry as always. Long legs and long ears and tail, and a long way. Well, I had no goose, I tried to keep her. She awake and I was sleeper. She flew away, left me the weeper. There ain't no children